I'll warn you, I'm just here informally, so I don't really have remarks prepared, and I'm just here to have fun and answer questions and have a good time. A few things I'll say is I'm very happy to be here. I was in Norway once before, and I love coming here because this is where my family came from years and years ago. It's a very strange thing that. You know, if my grandparents were still alive, they would have been so thrilled that I came to Norway. And at the Humanist Conference, I got this big award and such little thing. They would have just been busting their buttons over this, except for the fact that it's a Humanist award. So maybe it's just as well they died before the heads exploded. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here. It's always good to be in a rational country after living in the United States. I have a reputation for being a bit rude, and apparently people keep telling me I have a sense of humor, but I'm here to tell you this is not true. I do not have a sense of humor. What I do is have a bunch of clowns as subjects that makes it really easy to seem like that. So the kinds of things I will write about on my blog are creationists. Isn't it hard to believe? Here we are, the 21st century, and there are people who are still arguing that the Earth is 6,000 years old. Okay, so the creationists are a hot topic. I talk about skepticism in general. So we have all kinds of crank medicine and all kinds of weird things going down. Just today I posted something about a crazy conference where they're peddling homeopathy and Ayurveda, who knows what else. What else do I write about? It's religion in general. I'm a person who thinks that if you are a real skeptic, if you are looking at the evidence critically, if you are evaluating truth claims using the scientific method, you are an atheist. If you're not, you're doing something wrong. And although religious people can be wonderfully nice people, I mentioned my grandparents, who I love very much, but I would also be telling you nowadays, there's a much smarter way to think about the world, and it doesn't involve going to church. Church leads you astray. I also write about science. In particular, my specialty, I'm a developmental biologist, an evolutionary developmental biologist, actually, and mainly what I'm interested in is how do we affect innovation and long-term change in morphology in organisms over time. So how do we evolve new features? How do we modify existing features to make new and thrilling things in evolutionary history? The kinds of stuff I do is I do some work on genetic assimilation and accommodation in zebrafish, where we expose zebrafish to teratological agents. Yeah, I make horrible monster zebrafish. It's really cool. The students love this. I've got recipes where you can raise baby zebrafish and make cyclops out of them. It's trivial. It's really easy and cheap. And then you ask, what went wrong there? What's affecting the development of midline in the head? This year I've started a new project where I'm looking at limb development. So we're really interested in natural populations of salamanders. What is the variation in wrist structure, for instance? How much natural variation exists in populations, and is that subject to selection? Is it affected by natural agents in the environment? I live in Minnesota, which is, it's got this reputation as this lovely farm state full of liberal Scandinavian type people. It's also intensely polluted because it is an agricultural state, and rivers are really nasty little sewers of agricultural runoff. So we've got all kinds of weird critters hopping around the landscape of Vegas, so we're also looking into that. Otherwise, I'm just going to open it up to questions. Whatever you feel like asking me, I will try to answer. And if you don't have any questions, I'll drink beer. Yes.
You use the term dictionary atheist.
Oh yeah. Oh. Yes, another thing I like to do on my blog is stir up controversy. And a while back, I wrote some stuff where I cussed out people for being dictionary atheists. If you've been around the atheist community for long, you know that there are many people who will minimize atheism. Who will say that all atheism means is that you don't believe in God. That's all it means. If you go to the dictionary and you ask, and look it up and say, okay, an atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God. And I made some posts where I said, this is not good enough. Because saying you don't believe in God is a conclusion. It doesn't tell anything about how you arrived at that conclusion. And as an intellectual process, it's not very interesting to just flatly give a conclusion, so we're done. And, you know, it got me into trouble because what I said is, what I tried to get across to people is that there are many different valid reasons to be an atheist. And I made examples of, for instance, I know people who are social justice atheists who are just simply outraged at what religion has done. And they're not making an intellectual argument about, you know, reasons for believing in God. They're just simply saying, look at religion, it sucks, it does horrible things, I oppose it. That's a perfectly good reason to be an atheist. If that's why you're an atheist, tell me that. Then there are people like, you know, like Richard Dawkins, who is a scientific atheist, who has evaluated the evidence for the existence of life on the Earth and has found the scientific explanation sufficient and sees no reason to invoke a God. Says, okay, well, until you give me evidence for this great being in the sky, we'll dismiss it. We disagree with it. So what I was trying to get across there is when you talk to people about why you're an atheist, it's not enough just to throw the dictionary definition. Say something more. Say something about the reason behind this, because that's what's ultimately persuasive to people, is when you can actually make a coherent, cogent argument about the subject. And okay, I do like to be controversial, so I'll say this too. There are stupid people in atheism. It's true. There are actually a fair number of them. I've met some of them. Not one of them here. And we have to appreciate the fact that just because we've got a movement that tries to be intellectual, that tries to make rational arguments about the world, not all the people in it are on the same page. So teach them. You know, it's not just religious people we have to educate. It's our fellow atheists we have to explain things to. Yeah.
Yeah, with all your work at let's say FEB and your blog website, how do you actually manage to work?
I always get this question, and I'm sorry. My answer is going to be rude and insulting. I'm going to say, how come you're not getting this much work done? What's the matter with you? You know, there's a couple reasons for it. One is, okay, you guys live in Oslo. You've got distractions around you. You've got things like this nice coffee and so forth. I live in Morris, Minnesota, and trust me, there's nothing to do. It's a population of 5,000 people. There is virtually no entertainment there. Instead, we've got 15 churches in town. Okay? So you can imagine, you know, after work, I come home, and there's nothing there, so I reach out through the internet. That's my mental stimulation. So that just move to somewhere remote. Go to the Arctic. Question over here?
Well, have you considered moving?
Have I considered moving? Oh, well, yeah. The thing is, I'm at this university called the University of Minnesota Morris, and it's a small liberal arts college. And it turns out to be my academic ideal. This is a job I actively sought out. Because what it is, it's a small community, a small college. We're very selective in our admissions. We get top students coming in, and it's got an academic philosophy I really like. You know, liberal arts education. You know, you don't just come in and listen to biology all the time you're there. You've got to learn philosophy and history and art and all this other cool stuff. And so I really like it that way. And it's good people. So I'm very attached to it. What I would love is for somebody to come along and invent a machine and just sort of scoop up about a 5 square mile area of this and move it about 150 miles around east. So if somebody could do that, that would be great. But otherwise, I really like it. I've had a few offers from other places, but I really did. Some people don't believe me about this, but about 10 years ago when I was on the job market searching for it, I had very specific criteria for what I wanted in a job, and this was my ideal dream position, except for the location. Everything else is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, you said you're working on salamanders. Do you think we are ever going to get to the point where we can grow limbs back on again?
Oh, wouldn't that be cool? Yes, I think we will someday. That there's been a lot of breakthroughs in the understanding of the actual processes involved. Now, growing a limb back on us is an extremely complicated problem, largely because we have to reinvoke the growth processes in the wound site, which we don't do. We induce scarring when we damage something. Salamanders develop this thing called the blastema, which is an actively growing tissue that actually forms the whole limb. We'd have to figure out how to switch that on. And then, of course, the other thing you need a mechanism for regrowing the nerves back. That's the really tricky part, getting nerves back and making appropriate connections. But by doing things like studying salamanders that can regenerate, figure out the molecular switches, see what you can do. There have been some interesting work done on, for instance, spinal cord regeneration, where insights from lower vertebrates have shown ways to suppress scarring in the spinal tissue and get at least partial regrowth. We haven't restored anybody's mobility by repairing the spinal cord yet, but we've got partial regrowth. So there's someday, yes. The rate science is growing. Give it another 50 years. I bet you will.
How come do you think that religion is so
Yeah.
much religion there and not here?
Right. There's something that's special about the United States Constitution is this. We've got it literally written in the Constitution that there's separation of church and state. That the government cannot impose a religion on anyone. And unfortunately it's a two-edged sword, because what it means is that nominally the government is not supposed to be involved in peddling religion at all. And what it means is that the government also cannot actively support or oppose the crazier religions that are out there. And this means that it's natural selection, right? It's evolution gone amok. There are so many crazy religions coming out of the United States. It's like a hotbed where we grow all these weird, wacky faiths. They just prop up out of the ground. And most of them wither and die fairly quickly, but others will last and last and last. Good examples are Mormonism, Latter-day Saints, and Scientology. Think about those things. Those things are crazy, and they've lasted.